Jet, I'll go around the back.
All right, do it. Udai attacks him. You're under arrest. A setup.
Greetings, children of the screen, your friendly neighborhood nerd scum here, and welcome once again to Carry That Weight, the Cowboy Bebop Retrospective. And this time I am joined by...
Bobby.
Right on, and you guys might have heard me talk about him in one of the other videos. This is my brother who first introduced me to Cowboy Bebop, and I thought it would be a fucking crime if I went through this entire retrospective without having him on at least one episode. Luckily, he had a little bit of time to come visit me, and we thought we would take this time to talk to you guys about Session 16, Black Dog Serenade.
Okay, showtime.
I think it's time to blow this scene. Get everybody in the stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
Right on, guys. So, Session 16, Black Dog Serenade, is basically the episode where we get the backstory on how Jet lost his arm. And we get this backstory through basically his old partner contacting him, letting him know that a prison transport ship carrying the dude who basically screwed him over and made him lose his arm has basically, like, all the prisoners rioted and they've taken over the ship, and he wants Jet's help to go and find the dude. And that's the episode, pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah.
Now, this is normally where we talk about, like, I'd talk to the person about, like, hey, man, what did you think about this episode since you've never seen it before? But we've seen it, and, like, we both really like this episode.
Oh,
It's like a dope noir, like, throwback, and it's just fucking awesome, despite the fact that Spike Spiegel plays no part in the episode.
Yeah, it's the only downside. But
Yeah, but, like, it's Jet's story, and he rocks it. So,
yeah, totally.
having said that, I think we're just going to jump into our favorites and least favorites. Right on, Bobby. So, this is obviously an episode you've seen tons of times. What's your favorite thing out of it? And I know it's hard to pick in a show with just so much awesomeness overflowing from it, but, like, what works for you the best?
Well, anytime we get more backstory on just, anything, any of the characters or anything, but especially the Syndicate, because it plays such a important part to,
Yes.
a lot of, especially Spike and Vicious and Julia.
Right. The overall, like, story arc of the whole
Right.
series.
Right. So, that's probably what my favorite part is, just getting a little more about the Syndicate and just a little bit more about the world that they live in and what.
Yeah. Like
So,
with Budai and all that kind of
Right.
stuff. The bad guy's name in the episode is named Budai, like the dude who, like, was responsible for Jet's whole thing, losing the arm and all that stuff. But yeah, like, I've talked about on the show before how the show doesn't really do what a lot of modern day shows do, where each episode, like, builds in a narrative fashion. Instead, like, you get little glimpses at the universe, and then when you step back and you realize, like, the repetition and circular nature of a lot of the episode structures just gives you, like, hints at the universe, and throughout the course of them you kind of can put them all together into, like, a hazy kind of picture. And so, like, we've seen in plenty of episodes so far where the Syndicate has a hand in things.
Right.
Or, like, there's a guy who the Bebop crew is after who has ties to the Syndicate. And this is yet another one of those where, like, you get to see how, if you'll pardon the term, vicious, like, the people who worked for the Syndicate are, which, again, is just kind of establishing for later episodes the level of threat. Now, we've already met Vicious at this point, but, like, we're just showing that, like, all of it's like this. And, like, for Spike to go up against Vicious and the Syndicate, as he will later on in this series, like, it's not a small thing. So, yeah, like, that's a good point. Like, the Syndicate is still on the periphery of the episode.
Yeah.
But they still play a big part in it. And in fact, like, they're I would say, like, the catalyst for the entire episode.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, the whole thing with what happens to Jet is because he's chasing Budai and he's getting too close to the Syndicate.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, like, that's solid. I hadn't even actually thought about that. But, yeah, that's actually really important to the overall series.
Yeah.
Good one. See, this is why it's good to have him on the fucking show.
Sure.
As for me, my favorite thing in the episode, well, I mean, like, if I'm being honest, my favorite thing in the episode is just one scene, and so I'm going to mention something else, but, like, it's the scene whenever Jet tells Ed that, like, he might not be coming back, and if so, to do all this stuff, and Ed just gets excited about the fact that she has more responsibilities on the ship now, and is just like, yeah, I get to water the plants, and she does, like, her little sing-song thing. If I'm being honest, that's actually my favorite thing in the episode, because it's kind of the only levity in the entire episode.
Yeah.
But in truth, my favorite thing is, and even though it's a total cliche, and we've seen it millions of times before, the fact that it is, in fact, Jet's partner who actually blew his arm off. It's not the main bad guy. Because, again, as I've said in the show, like, they use repetition, and not just repetition of, like, the villain of the week, but repetition of theme, and, like, repetition in a way that basically they take, like, the cultural zeitgeist of repetition. Like, they use the tropes of, like, the kind of style that each given episode is drawing from the most, and really play into those in a big bad way, and manage to do it really, really well. So while we've seen that idea a lot of times before, it still really works, and because we're familiar with it, it resonates with us. Like, we don't need a whole lot of explanation to understand how Jet's feeling, or, like, to get the scenario. Like, it just falls into place, and at the same time, like, earlier in the episode, like, you know, Faye is trying to get Jet to fix the shower, and then, like, she notices that, like, his cigarette is burnt down to, like, the fingertips on his metal arm. She's like, why don't you get that fixed too? And another big part of the show is, like, characters unwilling or unable to move past their past.
Right.
You know, they're unwilling or unable to deal with it. And in this episode, like, Jet makes the decision to go after Budai, but that's not actually the part of his past he's confronting. It's actually a part of his past that's even secret to him. And in that way, it is a very nice subversion of all the normal, like, tropes and cliches of the kind of, like, gritty noir of, like, you know, the cop who left the force because something bad happened. And, of course, his partner has something to do with it, but, like, just the way it's done, like everything else in the show, is so beautiful and so awesome. And then you get that badass final stand between Jet and his partner, which, again, like, Jet's a badass throughout this whole show, absolutely, but because it's something so personal, and seeing the way that he reacts to that really adds an extra layer to his character that has been closed off from both us, the audience, and from the rest of the Bebop crew. So yeah, it's...
Yeah, because that's what all of them do. None of them open themselves up.
No.
And to see that vulnerability, it's nice.
And it just adds this extra level of, like, tension and, like, wonder, and also the fact that, like, these guys are friends. It just complicates things. And as I've said plenty of times before, the two things that make characters interesting is contradiction and complication. And this episode gives us that in spades.
Indeed.
Right on, guys. So, again, it's a fucking awesome episode. It's hard to pick anything that we don't like, but if you had to say something, was there anything that doesn't work for you, or anything you felt was missing from the episode?
Spike? Well,
Spike?
More Spike.
Yeah.
You'd always have more Spike.
Yeah, and I mean, like we said, he's not really needed in the episode, and the episode's not really him.
No.
Now, mind you, they could have played on that idea of, like, maybe he knew Budai and stuff like that, but again, as I've said many times, you're dealing with 20-minute episodes.
Yeah.
So it's all about economy of storytelling. So yeah, like, I love Spike, and I want to see him in every episode. He's not necessarily needed, but he could have been there, and it would have been interesting, but I feel like in order to do that, you would have had to spend more screen time on him. I don't think you could just drop him into a scenario where Jet is going after a former member of the Syndicate, and Spike just, like, stays on the ship and does nothing. I think that'd be difficult, and this needed to be Spike's story. So I agree with you. Yeah, like, I like Spike, but as we already said, like, the episode's brilliant and it's awesome, and Spike is not needed and might even have gotten in the way of the story they were trying to tell. But you can always use more Spike.
But it is kind of weird that, you know, Jet ends up going after a member of the Syndicate, and Spike's not involved.
Yeah.
It's just one of those kind of weird things.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird. That's definitely true. And but yeah, like, and again, keep in mind, guys, that we're kind of nitpicking here. Like, this is
really
a great episode in a great show that has very few flaws. So, like, when we get to these points, as you've seen in many of these, we'd have to be like, I wish there was more Ed, or like, why wasn't Ein in it? And it's just like, we gotta find something that's, like, a negative in a show where there are very few negatives, if any, you know. But we'll go ahead with that then and jump right into mine, because mine's, like, really, like, a nothing thing.
Yeah.
Like, so earlier in the episode, we meet a character who's going to end up flying the prison ship after they kill all the pilots and the guards and stuff like that, and he reveals the fact that he used to be a cop. And like my only problem with the whole episode is that like at some point we didn't see prisoners murder him. Because that's what would happen.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter that you're a prisoner now and that you were a crooked cop, or a crooked cop to a crook is worse than, like, a legit cop. Because that's just a crook who's using a badge, like, to get out of trouble.
Yeah, I
like,
suppose that's true.
Yeah, so, like, I kind of wish we'd seen that guy get a little bit more specific comeuppance, especially from the criminals. But again, 20-minute episode. Yeah. It's about economy of story. You got to focus on what's important. But it would have been nice, just because, like, duh, that's what would happen.
Would seem realistic,
right.
Sure.
But you know, we gotta like have Jet's story. We gotta establish that Budai's a badass. We have to have like all the witty banter about smoking and stuff like that. So yeah, like that's probably my only thing in this episode that I can point at, other than maybe Spike not being there, where I was like, damn, like you had an opportunity to do something cool, and like instead you decided to tell an amazing story that didn't need that cool moment. So you know, whatever. Fuck me, I guess. It's a great episode. Right on, guys, so those are our thoughts on Session 16. How would you rank this? Like, not a specific number, but, like, would you say that this is, like, is it in your top 5 episodes of the show?
Top 5? No, I mean, no, probably not, because, number one, there's not enough comedy for me, probably.
Fair.
And just, there's so many great comedic episodes.
Yeah, there are.
I mean, this is, you know, a very important episode, you know, for Jet and his backstory and stuff, and establishing and us getting to know that character. But I'm sorry, not my top 5.
No, yeah. And I mean, like, if we were doing it as like a top 5 of the most important episodes, maybe, but definitely in the top 10 of those. But yeah, while it's a very well executed episode, because it does focus on one character and it excludes like Spike and the other characters get so little screen time, you don't really get what by this point in the show you've become accustomed to as like the tone of Cowboy Bebop.
True. Yeah.
Which actually takes a while for that tone to get set, but once it is, like that becomes the thing that you love. And this episode specifically almost seems like a step backward to like where before Ed was like officially in the crew almost in terms of tone. Like it's a little bit grimmer, it's a little bit darker, and that's exactly what it needs to be. And it's an amazing episode that again we highly recommend. But I also don't think I would say it's in my top 5. It might be in my top 10. But again, it's really hard to qualify.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. But anyway, guys, that's the episode. Make sure and check us out next time for the next edition of Carry That Weight, the Cowboy Bebop Retrospective. Thank you very much for joining us. And everybody make sure and say hi to my brother down in the comments and stuff. Not that he's going to read them or anything, but you know, it'd be nice. Be nice, children of the screen. This is Cowboy Bebop land, and we're all friends here. Thank you very much, guys. I hope you all have a good one. Nerd Scum, out.
Allez, à bientôt. See you next time.
Good night. The real